Today we had 8 people who did something that a lot of people in the world would think was just foolish. To be baptized, to join the congregation of the Christian church, makes no sense whatsoever. We are by and large products of the Enlightenment of the 18th century. We are children of empirical science. To engage in such foolishness, for a lot of people, is unthinkable. Why should one believe? What sense does it make? What proof is there? We give Thomas a hard time, call him Doubting Thomas. You know, really, all Thomas wanted was the same thing everybody else had. Jesus came, the disciples were there, he showed them his resurrected self with the nail holes in his hands and the wound in his side, and they all went, "Oh, we believe." And they told Thomas, and Thomas wasn't there, and he said, "You know, I want to see the same thing." Who wouldn't? What we all want is shared experience, right? Isn't that why we do things together, so that we can talk about them later and say, "Look, you remember when we did this and that?" It's shared experiences that bind us together as human beings. All Thomas wanted was the same thing the other disciples had. He wanted to see what they saw. The risen Christ. And unlike Mark's immediately, it was 8 days later. So Thomas had to stew over that for a while, didn't he? It didn't come immediate. 8 days later, Jesus appears to them again in the upper room. And Thomas sees and believes. Typical guy. Men on the Myers-Briggs personality inventory, men usually test as S's, which means they're sensory, which means they want to see, touch, taste, feel. They'll believe what they can see and touch and taste and smell. That's the way guys generally are. So it kind of fits. Thomas was a guy. He wanted to see, he wanted to touch, he wanted to experience the risen Christ so that he could too believe. Don't we all? Wouldn't we all like to have that experience? Wouldn't, as much as faith as we have, as much as a leap of faith as we've taken, to say we believe, to believe in things not seen. Wouldn't it be nice just to have that blessed assurance that Fanny Crosby talks about? Well, I don't think Fanny saw it either. But there was something that caused her to write, "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine." Where do we find the evidence? Because isn't that what our empirical ways are all about? We have to have the evidence. The scientific evidence that proves the theory. Where's the evidence? Any ideas? I know you all find evidence in different places. One of the places I find evidence is right here. Why are you all up on a Sunday morning? To listen to me talk? I mean, come on. I'd rather be sleeping. Well, maybe not. Why do we do the things we do? Why are we mentoring with kids in Kids Hope? Why do we have education for our little ones? Why do we feed thousands of people in North Berrien County. Why do we do that stuff? Just because we're nice people? I don't think so. I mean, we can be nice. There's a lot of nice people around, but they're not running a food bank. They're not taking time out of their week to go mentor with a child they don't even know or is not related or doesn't really have anything to do with them, but just because they need it. Why do people do stuff like that? Why are there volunteers all over Oklahoma and Kansas and Iowa today? 120 tornadoes there yesterday. So far only 5 deaths, which is great. A lot of warning. But there are towns torn up. There are Red Cross people there. There are UMTOR people there. There are church folk from all over there. Why? Why would you interrupt your perfectly good weekend to go clean up tornado debris? Why do we do that stuff? I've only got one answer to that. It's the power of the risen Christ. Only Christ could compel us to do those kinds of things. Only Christ could call us to do those and get us out of our comfort zones and go help other people we don't even know. That's one way I know that Christ is risen. That's one way I have blessed assurance. Sometimes it's simpler than that. Sometimes it's just that person that comes to your house when tragedy strikes or grief comes or pain comes, and they come and they just give you a hug or a smile. Somebody you might not even know, but they reach out to you. I feel it when I do the same for others. Sometimes it's something we read or a movie we watch. That little voice inside says, I am yours and you are mine. This is what humanity is about. The gospel message. Don't be afraid, Jesus says to his disciples when he appears in the midst of them. Did that ever strike you funny? Don't be afraid. Of course they were afraid. Believe me, if the risen Christ appeared right now in the middle of us, where we all could see him, what would we be? Afraid. I used to like to watch those paranormal, where they hunt ghost hunters. Oh, I'm afraid. I mean, if the risen Christ appeared in the midst of us, we would be screaming our heads off. Come on. Ah! So were the disciples, obviously. Don't be afraid. Rule number 1 of the gospel. Don't be afraid. Rule number 2, love each other. Because love is the opposite of fear. So when we see evidence of people not being afraid, where they should be maybe, we see evidence of the risen Christ. Whether they know it or not. When we see evidence of acts of love and kindness and grace and mercy, we see the risen Christ. Whether they know it or not. For some of us, it's in music. I don't know about you, but singing the Hallelujah chorus last week just chills up and down me, because I haven't done that for a while. And I understand it for a few of the listeners, and I know it's just as much fun to sing as it is to listen to. Being a musician, music always touches me quicker than most things. I don't know what it is for each of you individually. What it is that says Jesus is alive Jesus is real. Jesus is risen. And that's why I'm here. As we welcome new members, new people who are dedicated to this community of faith, to serve it with their prayers and their presence and their gifts and their talents and their abilities and their witness and all the other things that God might ask of them. Then what Jesus said to Thomas makes sense. You believe because you've seen. But I'll tell you what, even greater blessings are there for those who believe without seeing. Even greater blessings will be for those who believe without this experience that you've been privy to as my disciples, but those in generations to come will believe what you said. In fact, that's why we have the gospel, as John says, so that you can believe that Jesus is the Christ, that Jesus is risen. Look for the evidence around you. When you see it, remember that Christ is alive. Christ is at work. And calls you to join in that reconciling work of the world, bringing the world unto himself. That's our job, is to work alongside the one we believe in.